put this together. So this little background, the council approved turnback agreement this past December, kind of giving us CSAH 40. So as you can see, it's multiple sections of city streets that comprise the former corridor. As a part of the turnback agreement, we received just over 1.1 million funds, and so one of the things we have to do as a council, is plan for how those resources will be used along the corridor. So this kind of map of the corridor, kind of essentially running from Jonathan Carver Parkway east through the downtown, and then connecting with County Road 61 or Chaska Boulevard on the east end. Some pictures of some some sections of the corridor. Here's some downtown pieces, and then heading east out toward River Bluffs in the city of Chaska. Also, the city's comprehensive trail plan. Here you can just kind of see how the corridor fits within the city's long-term plan. There's a unimproved trail section through U.S. Fish and Wildlife that kind of runs parallel to Main Street or County Road 40. By the way, it's really hard to kind of figure out what to call this because it's called so many things. The county has in their, I think it's their master trails plan, kind of a regional corridor kind of coming off of our levee trail, kind of heading west, and then eventually as you cross County Road 11 or Jonathan Carver Parkway, it'll head northwest towards Waconia. We've had some, Aaron and I talked to Marty Walsh maybe 6 months ago. They're trying to plan a corridor, some from Carver to Waconia, and initially looking at a way to kind of incorporate Mueller's Lake or the Pitt Lake as a part of a feature along that corridor. So they're working on that. When we have an update on that, we can share that with the city council.
Well, Mueller still owns it, or after?
No, after.
Oh, okay.
But
I'm like,
Right on there.
no, I mean, it's like Carver.
Truck crossing.
It's one of those kind of like tough mudders. That can
Yeah.
It's an adventure
It'll
trail.
electrocute you.
I think what they're trying to do is kind of identify a corridor, and then as property becomes available, they would acquire it.
Okay, what's the latest projection on Mueller's? 20 years?
50 years.
50, okay. No, it's long.
Yeah. So kind of what we know about the corridor, the city or the city council needs to develop a scope of work for the county funds contributed to the corridor. The scope of work development process for the corridors will likely have significant impacts to residents, businesses, and other community members. The route is the primary east-west transportation route and kind of goes through the heart of the city, the historic district. And the city has made several investments into streetscape and kind of coincidentally kind of connected to our strategic plan placemaking areas along those corridors. And so this isn't something that's necessarily new, but we're going to try to replicate maybe some strategies that have been successful, primarily with, if you think of Jonathan Carver Parkway. So related to that, and understanding maybe some of the potential impacts to our stakeholders, residents, businesses, looking at the idea of generating a community task force, and then to ensure kind of some diversity of participation, having each council member submit 2 names that would participate. So from, and you could choose neighbors, you could choose people in the downtown, etc., but each would submit 2. And then that group would work with the staff that you see listed below. Just kind of a little bit of background. I think something new for Councilmember Pershman. The city council probably about 5 or 6 years ago got away from having council members serve on committees for 2 primary reasons. One, when 2 council members were serving on committees, those 2 had significant influence on the process, and then it kind of diluted what the balance of the 3 remaining council members had as far as input. So the strategy was to say, let's have the committee or staff work on it, and then all 5 council members can have that feedback. And then that kind of coincided with a neighboring city got into an issue related to open meeting law and having two members serve on committees, and whether or not that was an open meeting law violation if they didn't post those meetings, have agenda minutes, and so on. And so the city at that time made a strategy decision to say we're not going to do any committees where it's just two members of the city council in groups, so that we could maintain that level of transparency.
So is that what you did with JCP then? Each
Correct.
council member identified two delegates?
No, that was, we developed, I think, kind of a.
We did one person for each commission.
Yeah, it was more of like a position, like we wanted one person from each commission, one person that lived in the city for less than 5 years, one city or person that lived in for more than 20. So we could, if the council wanted to do that, you could certainly do that.
The only person I know on my street is Joy.
Oh, come on.
She'd be happy.
You know, and frankly, you know, if the council wanted to do this version or some hybrid, you could certainly say, hey, staff, do you know people along the corridor that you think would have an interest, or another stakeholder, et cetera. But that's kind of the outline of what we envision for participation. So what would be the task force objectives? Review and assess parking availability along the corridor. I think that's something that we've talked about in various forms. So anytime improvements are being made to an area, you know, can you tweak something, adjust something to add to more parking availability or accessibility? Another piece, as you can see from the picture below, you have to kind of look over your left-hand shoulder at the intersection of Mount Hope and Old Carver Road. It's kind of a clunky access to getting over to Casey's and the Depot Park. Similar, reviewing the intersection of Broadway and Main. It has a very, I would contend, a very industrial county road feel. It's really big, it's really wide. It doesn't have really a sense of place. It kind of functions like a road that was constructed 50 years ago. And so now that you have this significant investment from the Getaway Motor Cafe, the City Public Services Department is transitioning out of that site. How do you want that to look, feel, and operate going forward? Exploring opportunities to improve pedestrian and bicycle access to neighborhoods, specifically Carver Bluffs, and then exploring opportunities, as I mentioned below, to enhance streetscape at prominent intersections that foster that streetscape that we've developed throughout the community, and then emphasize placemaking in the historic downtown. So the study schedule, which was put together by Aaron and Dan, we thought it was important to schedule these meetings so that when you went out to the volunteers that you're looking, or stakeholders you're trying to solicit, you could give them dates for when the groups would meet, and you kind of have a big picture view of how we would hope to implement the process. So what we're doing tonight is just proposing this process and the specifics of that process, and then looking for feedback from the council if this is what you prefer or some other strategy. So really meant for a discussion and input taking. Happy to answer any questions, or Dan or Aaron if I've missed anything.
Questions?
I don't have any questions. I mean, I like the idea of doing a task force. I think that's a great idea. I think that worked really well for JCP. I thought we got a lot of really great ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. So I like this idea. My challenge with nominating 2 people per council member, so, right, I can probably name on one hand at least 5 people in my neighborhood who've been very passionate about what should happen along County Road 40 from the Bluffs, right? So I feel like I can cover that, but I would want to make sure that we have a good diversity of input along that whole corridor. That would be my ask, and I'm not sure how we achieve that. Maybe we can coordinate and figure that out. I don't know, but that would be my ask.
And so my comment was gonna be on how we choose the task force too. It feels a little strange and funny to me, like handpicking them. 'Cause I feel like it's almost like favorites. Like it could be construed as I know my neighbor's gonna want the same things I want, so
Sure.
I'm gonna want, Julie on here. I like the way that we did the task force for the JCP project. I thought it was a nice smattering of people of different places, ages, time frames that they've been here. So, well, I like kind of the outside the box and trying to do this. I think I might prefer to have something that's a little bit less me picking someone and a little bit more having people who are interested.
Right, maybe we identify the areas we want people to live or something, right? Some sort of criteria and open it a little bit more up to the community and say, hey, click here if you're interested.
Yeah, I think that this
I feel
being
better that
like
way.
a streetscape that we're working on, I'm less worried about like the end goal is a street, a safe, pretty street, right? So like,
Right.
I guess if any of us think that some of us have ulterior motives against that end goal, like then we shouldn't be sitting around this table. So I think we can probably do a good job of collaboratively picking and identifying where we want to find folks from and everybody effectively
Figure that
finding
out.
2 designees, I think. Figure out the neighborhoods that, you
Yeah.
know, along the corridor. I think business owners, I think we can pick.
I like that, but I'm so uncomfortable with having council go out and handpicking people. When I think then that the rest of the community who might be interested might see that as, well, I didn't get a fair shot to be on that task force.
I have a question with the budget. So when we talked about having this turned over, I thought there was a lot of discussion around where that money had to go for maintenance, and now we would be responsible for these activities that the county might have been for in the past. Do we have, of that 1.1 million, how much of that goes to improvements?
That exercise was a formula to determine how much money they would give us, but we're not tied to do anything
Okay.
specifically. So, one of the things that Dan's been leading is applying for the same pot of money that we got for the 6th Street West project, the local road improvement project fund. So that could nearly double the budget, if we had a successful application for this. So, that'd be part of the, I would say, process for Aaron and Dan to lead with the committee is that it's not 1.1 million in streetscape, it's balancing pavement condition like you would at probably any street section with, streetscape and, maybe, phasing a plan that says, hey, we'll do this when this happens and that when this other thing happens. So it'll be a process, but we're not, the county has no input, feedback, or regulatory authority to determine how the funds are spent.
No, I didn't
Oh, okay.
assume the county did. I thought that money was already earmarked for things that we would have to do when we took over ownership. So I stated that wrong. Then the other question was, we talked about parking for the Motor Cafe as a need and expanding that. Are there other burning desires that we had around this that you have talked about in the past when this came to be?
No, I would just say other than kind of creativity, oftentimes promotes additional creativity. So, when the city turned 3rd Street between Harvey's and the Carver Creamery into a one-way, it coincided with an adjacent property owner wanting to sell property. And so that parking then ended up matching with a little parking lot that we put right behind 3rd Street. So, if intersection configurations change in a way that complements a way to maybe make parallel parking, angled parking, or some, removing a sidewalk to create some more space to do this. The message that I feel like we get as staff is that parking is at a premium in the downtown, and if there are opportunities that can create high impact, low cost solutions related to parking, that we should talk about them. And so having a task force, however it's constituted, we might get some of those ideas that might add to the brainstorm to say, hey, why do we park that way on this section? We should do this, and that might create some additional activity.
All right, I guess I wasn't aware of heartburn except over the parking by the Motor Cafe. So, Joy and Christy, the selection process for JCP, that worked or didn't work last time?
I thought
I thought it
very
worked really well.
And what, okay. And we're
So it had
suggesting
diversity.
deviating from that?
This is deviating
this
from
is-
Okay,
that?
so let's
Okay.
figure out if we're not comfortable with that. Do you?
I guess I don't, I'm missing what the challenge is there, what worked or didn't work, or what you think is a problem. I don't, not to say that
No,
it shouldn't be changed, I just don't understand what the,
this isn't the hill I'm gonna die on, but if we wanna do it in a way that we figure out different constituencies so that we can give staff direction, where do we wanna pull people from?
Mhm.
So, and you're gonna have to help here. So when we were doing the JCP one, we had residents who've been over this amount of time, under this amount of time. We had master gardeners on there, right? Joanne Wygan was on there. I don't know if that was, yeah, Karen, okay. And then what were some of the other?
So I'm gonna just, if you don't mind, I think we need to think differently about this, because I think this is more Jonathan Carver Parkway, we all drive through
Yeah.
Jonathan Carver Parkway. I think that this is more of a local route, so I'm thinking like folks who live along the route, somebody
Yes.
from the Bluffs, somebody from, help me out,
River Bluffs.
River Bluffs Estates, somebody from downtown,
For sure.
2 business owners from downtown.
And
Somebody
that's
who's
fine
been
with me,
here
yep.
more than 10 years, somebody who's been here less than 6 months.
so then aren't you
know,
just narrowing
downtown.
down the group of people you asked from?
Right.
How's that different?
Yeah.
Well, to me,
Right.
then everyone can have a chance to get in on it though. So if you're in the Bluffs, whatever that looks like, and we have this out there, anyone can say, no, I wanna do this. Where if we're handpicking, that's
You
the part
gotta
I'm
know
not comfortable.
Joy, she's gotta, right? You have to complain to Joy,
Yeah.
right? Right, you know, yeah.
So I agree with you.
Christy is suggesting staff does the selection or we solicit it, where the idea in the slides right now is that you pick 2 people.
Understood.
And that was,
Sorry.
no, it's okay, and I could be misremembering this, if that's a word, but I don't believe we did an open solicitation for that, for the Jonathan Carver Parkway. We wanted to hit categories, and then we found people by connecting with them and asking them if they'd sit on, not to, I don't recall doing like an open, like, if you're interested and you fit this category.
I feel like we
Apply.
did for like the resident age, like the 10-year and under one, but everything else we filled in the blanks.
Okay.
You know, an alternative, you could pick an HPC member, a planning commission member. You know, we could create the categories and then leave X amount open for like a random draw of residents, if that's what you wanted to do. But to make sure that we, ultimately, like, we want it to be community focused, we also want this to be, we want enough downtown business owners so that it feels like they created, instead of like, here's what we prepared, and then we have this like, well, we were way off, they hate this, like, we want them at the table, so.
Yeah. I like some of your suggestions, like we'll like chunk it off into pieces to make sure we get people who are along all of those sections, whoever that might be.
Yeah.
I see the value of narrowing it down and even us selecting, just so we're sure that we've got representatives in the scope of this project. And I get wanting to have everyone inclusive, but if we have a limited number of people sitting on this, we really need to control the scope of that. So I see the reason for doing that.
But I can see how, I mean, you can still do that by giving some leeway then to not have them, I mean, if we have sections from, you know, this downtown spot, and then we have from here, whatever, you know, out or that side, I don't know, I just, there's a lot of opinions downtown, I mean, downtown is its own little unique microcosm too, right? And so, I get a little bit nervous, saying, well, you asked the doghouse to do it, but why didn't you ask the creamery people to do it? Or we, like as council members, like,
Right.
I asked the doghouse, but I didn't ask.
Okay, so that we can provide staff to folks. One representative, here's just what I jotted
Yeah.
down. one representative from each commission, River Bluff Estates, 1, Bluffs, 1, Downtown Resident, 1, 2 business owners, 2 downtown business owners.
How many people is that? Is that enough?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We were
What?
looking at 10 before,
Oh, we were looking at 10 before, okay.
2 for each of us, so.
And you said how many downtown besides business?
3 commissioners,
Yep.
River Bluff Estates, Bluffs, Downtown Resident, business owner,
2 business owners.
I'm sorry, 2 business
Okay.
owners, yeah, that's what I've done.
I mean, just,
And then we could have more than 10 years and under along the corridor and open that just for anyone on the corridor?
That gets a little tricky, we would probably have to do, because again, there too, like, we're gonna have to, that might be an open.
I think it might be helpful for you to step back and say, what do you want out of this task force? I mean, you could kind of open it up and say, we want as big of a cross-section of Carver residents and businesses, and, you know, you don't want it to be any more than 10, otherwise it'd be not productive. So you could have this cross-section piece, or, you know, you could have a targeted where you're like, you know, it's not just 2 downtown business owners, it's, we're gonna get, I mean, I would say, like, if I'm like pre-engineering this, like, I want Lisa, Greg Witt, or the Royces, to 2 of those folk out of those 3, because we're really targeting the intersection of Broadway and Main. And I wanna get some residents and Casey's and Greg from the insurance office, so that I really make sure I'm getting feedback on Mount Hope Road and Old Carver Road. And then a smattering of, like, you know, other folks, so that, like, because really part of the committee is to create, part of it is to like test run like some of these thoughts, so that you're not spending 5 or 6 meetings, and then those folks that we mentioned come to the meeting and say, this won't work for my business, it restricts parking, it's a safety hazard from people, so it's like choosing what path, and there's not a one right and one's wrong, but I think choosing what path you want to use will dictate how we set up the rest of the process. Why are you smiling at me like that?
Choose your own adventure.
Oh.
Will they get to see your traffic animations?
Wrong intersection.
Depends on what type of folks we have in the room. I mean, I would say this really is defined as a very simplified public process, because there's not huge topics of, are we moving the highway from this side of the city to the other side? At that point, you're going down a public open house, here's our ideas, you gather comments from 100 people, you compile them, you come up with new ideas. There's a very big public process to corridor studies. This one's pretty simple and constrained, so we just need some feedback on ideas, such that we've got really a user of the road to say, that's a terrible idea. And again, the alternative is, you know, an open house that nobody attends, you know, which is a very real outcome in many studies, in which people aren't too worried about the outcome.
Brent, you asked what we want to get out of this. I want to get feedback from folks. I want to find folks who can meet on these 3 dates that we've outlined and who can participate in the process. I do like your idea, and I do agree that we do have to have a little bit of targeted outreach for the areas that we're really have already identified as needing some help downtown. So I think you're right in line, but so 3 commissioners, somebody from River Bluff Estate, somebody from the Bluffs, a downtown resident, 2 downtown business owners, somebody who's been here for 10 years and somebody who's been here, and I just threw in less than 2 years. That's 10 people.
So there would be 2 business representation and 8 resident representation?
I'm gonna ask, for having commission, we don't have the Parks Advisory, that's not together right now. Okay,
Oh.
So it would just be planning
I mean, I
then, right?
have
Yeah.
my list,
Okay,
you
you're
can
right.
pick someone on the list of people so far.
Right.
So it's just 2 commissioners then.
That's actually okay, I mean, I don't think,
That
I
would
think
not
I wanna
people
get
then.
some feedback from
Would we want more business on there, just because of all of the
They
intersections
seem
and
to be
parking?
the big stakeholders there.
Would we want more downtown residents on there?
I think how many downtown residents right now, just one?
One.
I think 2. This road affects the residents down here a lot too.
So,
You can tell me to be quiet, but there's unintended consequences, in the same vein that you're talking about, like, there's downtown residents, yes, but then you get into the whole wide downtown, because everybody uses this road in this section, Carver Bluffs, Spring Creek.
Midtown.
You- I guess I'm still not hearing from you, council, what you want out of this. If you want the big cross section, to hit every neighborhood, or do you want targeted?
No, but we can target, but that doesn't mean we can't have a couple others. We can have some at-larges, right, who come from anywhere in town too.
I still don't hate the idea of us picking people. I think it hasn't been super easy finding people for the parks. What are we, I'm sorry.
I have like 20 now.
Okay, well, I don't know.
Or is it a hybrid, or you each pick one, and then we fill in some of the blanks?
I like the hybrid idea, then your group might get bigger.
You would do 5, we would bring the other 5.
I think 10 maximum.
Okay.
And then past that, if people want to make comments, we could put a phone number on the website and say, call if you have any questions. There's going to be a
there'll be
council
open house.
update that's going
It'll
to
be
be
open
public.
house, there'll be ways
There's
for
gonna,
people to
there's
get
gonna be other
feedback.
opportunities, and
Yeah.
we can take a phone call if somebody has any concerns. But once you get outside that, it's not a task force anymore, then you may as well just make it an open house.
And are these 3 dates evening meetings?
Noon.
I can get on board with hybrid. I think if we want to do a hybrid one, but I think there's got to be a chance for some folks that just aren't handpicked by council members.
And we might have some people that we feel like are important that you might not think of too. Like,
You don't have to name them, they're all important.
well, I was
And I
thinking
think
about the
also
other
just-
intersection.
What I really want is that it's really just, they're giving maybe recommendations or ideas, they're not making decisions, and then just to really just promote the open house. Like, it's,
Well, the idea
is
is
to get all the
they're making
feedback
decisions.
before.
I mean, we have the ultimate say,
Yeah.
but just like for Jonathan Carver Parkway, there wasn't anything that we said like, we don't like this grass
Yeah.
in the roundabout. Like, these folks are giving 3 of their evenings, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially when we're asking them to give up their time, and if we're asking them, we're all
So
going
you're
to
asking,
somebody.
so we want them to make recommendations or like really narrow down so that we don't have to decide through.
The idea is that they're coming up with this, I'm sorry, what is it called? The scope of work, right?
Okay.
And then we take a look at it and maybe tweak it 15 degrees, but
And with staff guidance, obviously,
Right.
we keep them within the parameters.
Yeah.
We would likely have a parameter in our head. We wouldn't share it with them to say, stop talking, you're over budget, but we would be able to navigate that.
but know that the guide rails are no roundabout at
Right.
the intersection down here.
Would there really be, okay, no, this helps, because I'm looking at then like the city council update number 2, that likely in early August would be pretty close to the plans.
Correct.
And then an open house to see if there's, but that's really not as much time for feedback, that's the open house, where we could make, and then ultimately the adoption after the open house.
No, I mean, I think we have absolutely taken feedback on the community open house. I remember the 2019 project. We went around and you don't want a sidewalk for feedback? Okay, we'll put it at the curb line, like there's time to make nits.
And part of the JCP process was that the people who were in the room became so proud of their work product that having them explain it to council, I think, was really impactful for them, but also for council, that it was a shared community vision. And it was 10 people who typically aren't decision makers telling you why they made the decision. So I think, at least for me, it was really impactful that they came to a place of understanding and confidence in their plan.
Was it done for the JCP, or is it possible to have like a close date on comments? You know, it would be like, okay, after such a date, maybe that's like a middle of August, like, if you're not happy with this, sorry, too bad. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I just wanna avoid somebody saying, you know, well, I never got a chance to tell you that, you know, I didn't want that park bench right there.
I think we'll have
Like, when
the,
can you close it and say, we're not making more changes or taking any?
well, when the, the council will, at some point, let's say the community open house comes and there'll be two, either it's, you know, peaches and cream and they're like, hey, this is great, and you adopt it as is, or there's enough where like, we got some feedback we're concerned with, we bring it back. You adopt the study, but then there's still the process. The study just provides kind of a guide to Dan and his team when they create plans for the project, whenever that date ends up being. And then those plans go through our whole process where the plans come to the council and you approve them. So if we do our job right as staff, there'll be like the opportunity will be listed in the newsletter. We'll have a project page. We'll provide updates. So, but I don't think that provides you with
A deadline.
well, it doesn't provide us with like an ability to prevent someone from coming out of the woodwork or saying, hey, I have that. I think there could be things, but like as far as like scope, this is I would say a smaller scope than Jonathan Carver Parkway. Like there could be, I mean, impacts are kind of sometimes measured by the individual and what they like and don't like, but like, you know, we're not talking about signalized intersections and roundabouts. I mean, there could be some different traffic configurations.
I think that's important to remember though, is that we're not bringing to this group, do you want a stoplight or a roundabout? Like, they would be making decisions on some of the community feel pieces of it, not so much the technical engineering work of it, like the addition of a trail. Absolutely, we'll talk about that. But that group won't be tasked with how the corridor necessarily functions mechanically, at least.
I mean, some of these frankly are gonna be, you know, I would say 95% engineering recommendations on what the safest way to move traffic is through an intersection. And the council and the committee can debate that and ask questions about it, but, you know, it's either kind of you do it or you don't.
And the JCP group was, I think, really fantastic that they saw how the sausage was made, that the construction of that project was hard for everyone, but we had 10 more people who said like, oh, I was part of that process, it's going to be really amazing. So yes, it's that technical stuff, but it's also other people in the community, when there's heartburn, being able to say, I was part of it, like, I was able to make some of those decisions.
And we got some folks in that group that this was their first time being involved, some kind of unknown folks. We all know who the volunteers are in our community, right? The ones who will raise their hand first and will want to get involved. But it was cool that we kind of found some folks who were able to get engaged through that project.
And we've, you know, and I very much could be wrong, I'm wrong a lot, but we usually have
33% of the time.
we usually have a problem actually getting a roster to be filled, so I don't, you know, I'm not, like, there will be folks that will be like chosen, like, hey, would you provide impact or input based on, you know, relationships, you know, like, just based on the investment that Getaway has recently made, I think it would be a mistake not to include them in this process, you know, compared to the post office or whomever. But I don't have a line of sight to someone who's gonna be, I mean, if someone said like, I wanna be on, we'd probably just put them on, even if we didn't have the roster spot for them. We just have never been in that situation before, so I just, again, could be way out in left field on that. We rarely have had that. Now I'm sure because I've said that. But, it just hasn't been the case. We've had facility task force, we've had road task force, we've had groups working on parks. Sitting down after a day of work and getting dinner ready and then coming to a city meeting, as we know, is not the most exciting thing to do for folks. So,
Especially in the summer.
I think we're going to end up having to solicit. And I think if you want the impact that I feel like you're thinking you want, you're going to want that to be targeted, and maybe leave a couple spots open for folks that are just interested. But we're really looking to like test conditions with people that are really impacted. Doesn't mean everyone else doesn't get a say. It just, you know,
Courtney, where did you land on our, what you've written down?
We have 2 commissioners, River Bluff Estates, why don't you keep the running total?
Yeah, okay.
River Bluff Estates, the Bluffs,
2
2
commissioners.
downtown residents,
Okay.
2 business owners, somebody 10 years or more, somebody less than 2 years.
There's 10.
yeah, could you do that again?
2 commissioners, River Bluff Estates,
Yep.
Bluffs, 2 downtown residents, 2 business
Hold
owners.
up.
Sorry,
2 commissioners, 1 River Bluffs,
Bluffs,
1 Bluffs,
2 downtown,
2 downtown residences?
Yeah.
In,
2 downtown business owners. Somebody who's lived here for 10 years or more, and somebody who's been here for 2 years or less.
are you open to feedback on that?
Yeah, I'm,
I think you need more than 2 businesses.
Yeah, I think you're,
Yeah, that's what I was
you're
saying.
20% of your group is business
Yeah.
owners, 80% is residents.
Right.
Then put 3 businesses and 1 resident for downtown. Yeah,
guys, I'm open to feedback, I'm just
We have
looking
somebody
at
from
those.
HBC as well, who may be.
we do have HBC.
Which I like.
I'm gonna throw one out there. We should have Casey's and the businesses right at that corner. That's one intersection that's gonna have a lot of feedback, and whether they're on the committee or not, I'm gonna wanna ask their opinion. I mean, that honestly, that's how I would do this. I mean, I'm gonna ask the businesses that are gonna be looking at the area that we're gonna, be looking at changing. At that corner, it's gonna be right at the corner of 40. Those businesses at that corner, they're the ones that are most impacted. Anybody in the street, they're not gonna feel the difference anywhere. That's just my suggestion. Because the task force ideally is folks that I would normally want to ask and say, what do you think? So it's going to be those 2 areas, and then up the roadway, it's going to be about maintenance, and up 40, it's going to be about a trail. And those are the issues I'm just going to try to get feedback on. And so whoever would give that feedback would be ideal.
Because the river bluffs and the bluffs, we're just talking about pavement maintenance. There isn't really.
Trail.
But they drive
Very
through,
trail.
I mean, they're still using the road, it just means their business doesn't sit on it. It's a pathway that you're driving through every day.
Right, but every neighborhood in the community uses that road.
Right,
So why aren't they on that committee?
that was where I started, that was
Yeah.
point A for me, so.
We're not getting to a point where I don't think we're giving solid feedback
Oh,
to staff.
well, if that's what you want, well, that's what we'll do. We're here to give you feedback, and sometimes it might be critical feedback, but if you don't
Yeah,
like it, don't take it. I mean, that's, we're agnostic on that. We're gonna try to help you find blind spots if we see them. But if you say this is what you want, this is what we'll do with no baggage, this is how we'll do it.
Yeah, but no, you're right about like River Bluff Estates. They might just drive a 1/16 of a mile every day on the road, I think it's important to have the 2 downtown business owners.
I think maybe 5 downtown business owners.
Yeah, I think you need to have.
We're gonna either officially or unofficially include everybody that borders these intersections, so it's a matter of whether or not you want them to be officially on the committee, but we wouldn't be able to do it successfully by not having Lisa's
Yeah.
Place, Greg Witt, and the Getaway for this intersection, and, at least one of the residents and the insurance office in Casey's at the other. That has to happen. If you want to make it 15 or have some type of open process, we can certainly do that, or just say, meet with those groups separately, we can do that. But,
No, I don't hate that idea. So Greg Witt, Greg Cummins, Casey's, Lisa's, Getaway, and then 5 residents. 5 interested residents who we put an article in the newsletter to see who wants to do it. Going once, going twice. Feel like we've talked about this for a really long
really
time.
long.
I can live with that.
Yeah,
I think that's good.
fine.
Okay, Greg Witt, Greg Cummins, Casey's, Lisa's, Getaway, and then 5 residents.
Yes.
Council, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And if we get more than 5, we're just gonna do a random draw.
Yep.
Don't bring it back to us to
Yeah.
decide.
I'm gonna ask one more thing, yeah. Yeah, I'll make the decision. What if we went to 4 residents and 1 HPC member?
I think go 5 or more, just because to actually be available, those dates will be another obstacle.
I think 5 or more, and we could have an HBC member. It doesn't preclude them from being
Mm-hmm.
the member that applies, or the resident that applies.
Okay.
Good? Good? Okay. Let's see. Moving on, infrastructure.
I have one other question for the, not about that part, but about this.
Wait. You're okay with moving on?
No, she's still.
I have one question about what we're just looking at here. So when we're talking about where Mount Hope is by Casey's, do we have any accident data from that corner that we might be able to get a hold of?
Can sure ask.
Okay, probably not though.
We don't have any.
That's it then.
Okay.
Do you want us to ask the sheriff's
You would
office?
just ask and see if they have anything, and if it takes a long time to find the answer, make more work than it's worth.
I mean, because they're not, well, they might because it's a county road, or it had been a county road.
Okay, moving on to the infrastructure trunk service area update. Yes, Nick?
Thank you.
Okay, so we've been talking about trunk area charges for a while now. I think January 2021 was the first time that we started talking about it. It's been kind of a running topic. We've been giving you periodic updates throughout that time up until now. So a little bit of the why we're having this conversation. In Carver city limits right now, we are running out of developable land, frankly. So a lot of the projects that have been our residential projects that have lasted us full summers of construction are completed. So Meridian Fields, Oak Tree, Meadows, and Spring Creek, and Hawthorne Ridge are all completed, which is really exciting for the market, exciting for our community. And we have a couple of projects that are still under construction, but they're at a smaller scale right now. So we have Brookview, which is 23 lots available right now. Timber Creek has 91 lots available. They have a couple additional phases that will be platted, and then the preserve has 58. So in the grand scheme of things, we still have a lot of lots available, but over the past couple of years, knowing the amount of permit demand that we've seen, it's starting to feel like we're running out of space a little bit. So we started looking at different areas of the community.
How many more will be coming with Timber Creek?
I think they're at like 170, so probably they're about halfway through right now, I'd say.
Okay.
So we started to look at different areas in the community, different directions we could go. So we've been highlighting the north area or the Big Woods area, or south. So north is obviously a little bit bigger of a mix of housing and commercial industrial market, but it's felt a little bit unknown for us just because residential has been so comfortable for us for the market that we've had. And we haven't known a lot about the property owners in the north area. So it's left us with a couple more question marks in the south. We do know that Victoria and Chaska are both shooting that direction, so there's some synergy for us to continue north as well. Where south, we have a different relationship with the project, the people, et cetera. So it's primarily single family, which I would say is the area that right now we're pretty comfortable with. And there's a large amount of property that's owned by a willing developer, Summergate. They've been in a couple of times. They worked the Timber Creek project with us for Lennar. So we started actually October 2021. So that was the introduction to the conversation about trunk area fees. On January 2022, Bolton Mank was authorized to complete the study. We started to hear some rumblings that south was looking pretty good. We know these things, it feels comfortable. Let's continue that way. It also is frankly cheaper, so it felt like something that we could picture, take down with sizable projects that we could start. So on January 2023, the council directed staff to continue trunk area exploration for the south area. So that's where we're at right now. We got that direction. We're continuing that progress. So south, again, this is Summerfield at Summergate's concept. So again, single family residential. We've met with Summergate a couple times. We're continuing conversations with them. And generally, we've gotten really positive feedback from them. Working their relationship with the existing property owners and then a commitment to say, yes, Carver's Market feels like something that would support another Summergate project through the development process. So we presented those findings in January 2023. We felt pretty good about it. Let's move south, gung ho, all signs pointing that direction. And then March 2023, Aaron Schmidt and I had a meeting with a developer in the north area of town, which kind of shook up the feelings about the project. South always made a ton of sense to me just because it didn't feel like anything was happening north. So why wouldn't we go where there is some synergy, some people moving and shaking for development in that area? So we met with a property owner that was interested in large-scale development north of town, and they found it to have high development potential. So seeing areas of land that they could develop and something that they were excited about. Something else that was really interesting about the meeting that we had was that we saw one way that we thought the infrastructure should go, and they had invested some time and money for some creative problem solving for some infrastructure options. So that led us to believe that they've put in some thought to this project, thinking about it differently than we had. So we've started to think through some of their ideas, see what it looks like, and kind of, frankly, open our minds back up to the north area that potentially these things could all happen at once. None of it might happen, just keeping the option open. So at this point, we've shared information with both the development contacts that we have south of town and north, just to say this is where we thought we were going, but we understand there's potential for a different area. Something that we've tasked the groups with is a commitment from a developer to essentially begin the project. So it's not going to be a typical timeline where someone comes in and we move through preliminary plat and final plat in a couple of months, frankly, because we wouldn't have the infrastructure. So for construction of a 2025 utility project, we would need a commitment from a developer likely this year, which is not typical. It typically moves through the process within about 6 to 9 months. So we've tasked both of them with saying, hey, if you're interested, put something together, put something on paper. We need to see likely a preliminary plat application before we can say, yes, let's move forward with infrastructure. We talked with Casey about an upfront payment of about $1 million to say we can move forward with this utility extension, but we need commitment from you to say this project is definitely happening before we start moving with all of our eggs in that one basket. So the update tonight, no decision is being made. We're not looking for an up, down on either, but just an FYI that in a couple months, we might come forward and say we have a preliminary plat for this area, and it might be something that surprises all of us. So we'll continue to think through some of the infrastructure implications that we have, and also continue just relationships with both areas to say, we're looking for development, we're eager for it, how can we help? So continuing meetings, but just an update that we thought we were definitely going south, but north now feels like it could be a reality, maybe. So
Could we make
Questions?
I feel like we were coerced into going south.
was it me?
What you learned from this developer, which is super secret information between you and Aaron, does it have to remain super secret until they give us something in writing? When do we get an idea of what that looks
Yeah.
like?
At this point, they asked not to share any information, so
It is super secret.
it is right now.
Okay.
Can you share at all what they had for ideas on infrastructure, or is that just, wouldn't be helpful right now?
So the crossing under 212, the sewer crossing, feels really important, not only for a project that could happen there, but for a project to happen anywhere north. If you were to ask Aaron Schmidt like how long that's felt important to him, it's like 2017. But for me, it's starting to feel important in 2023, so 6 years later, I'm joining that bandwagon. So the realities of that feel much more real to me now. To get north at all, that sewer crossing needs to be part of our planning. And you can commit and say, I want to do it in 3 years, but we need to know that information to put in our CIP. We were thinking that we needed a large-scale lift station, and Aaron, you can jump in if I'm way off base. But they had developed a couple ideas that would push out the need for that lift station. So for the time being, they could make a system that works that eventually would go to that lift station, but lift station wouldn't be day one.
Okay.
That pipe upsizing, was that like 10 to 27 inches? What was that?
Underneath 212?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Does that still work for what they want to do? Is
Yeah, I
that
mean, that's
kind
the
of in
big
line?
difference between this and what we've been presenting in the past is, what we presented in the past is the entire project. That's a huge lift station that takes the entire
Okay.
service area. That opens up the entire area. what they would need would be far less. It's more related to the 212 crossing that eventually can work its way up to the big one, which is still fairly cost prohibitive.
So their plan eventually would tie into that lift station?
Exactly.
So we would plan for it with them, we would say your utilities need to be heading this direction, work this way, to eventually connect into that lift
Okay.
station. And when we started the process, we didn't have a willing owner or project to say, oh, let's move forward with this small scale project. It felt like we needed to take the whole piece just to say this area is open for development. But now that we're learning some more details, we can dial it back a little bit to say, oh, that does work for a couple of years and opens up XYZ projects.
Okay. And last statement is, this actually does fall right in line with what we've been talking about, with is understanding our long-term plan here. Because no matter what we do up there, we want to plan for what ultimately has to happen with the lift station and that force main, because that can go through properties that, you know, could be subject to the review. So this is really, really important to tie everything towards the long term. So it's good that we understand what the plan is. So it'll help.
I think Aaron told Dan what was
All right, Aaron has the answer to it, but he'll make sure that we don't block anything for the future.
So I hear you saying this doesn't eliminate the need for that big lift station, it just kind of kicks it down the road.
It-
a bit more.
Exactly, you can defer it.
I just want to make sure that this will work and this will be a long-term solution. What you said before our strategic planning session of something like you are the one profession that could do something really, really wrong and nobody would know, like that resonated with me, so I don't want to screw this up. And, you know, like, if we know that that lift station is coming, let's make sure that our fee structure is appropriate and that we can plan for it, not only like in your mechanical drawing kind of way and, you know, your city planning way, but also financially, and that we have the whole package that we know that this is coming.
Yeah, and I feel like the north area had so many question marks, but now we know exactly what it will look like. So we can start building towards that, where if we hadn't done the study for the north area, we could make some educated guesses, but now we know what that infrastructure actually needs to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, so when we're looking at the south area with that 800,000, maybe this is a question for you. What was our intended, how long we thought it would take to pay that off? Did we have that kind of outside number of saying, will we square with this after 20 years?
Yes, we did. You had slides that put together different time options.
It was timed out against the bond issuance, so 25 years.
25. So then if we, for the north area, do we have an idea of how many years that would be?
I would say don't take the 9.5 million, because we wouldn't be doing the full lift station if this project moves forward. We
Okay.
would be doing the sewer crossing, for sure, the 1.7, and then depending on what the project looks like would determine our involvement with it, but it wouldn't be the 9.5.
Right. It'd be significantly less costly just to get the pipe across the road on the north side.
And then potentially oversizing for the future to get to that lift station.
I mean, what we've hit, sorry if I overlooked this or didn't hear it, but we've essentially communicated to both groups, we need some type of level of commitment from you to help the council navigate which side goes first, because we don't have the financial capacity probably to do both. Within a frame of reference, I mean, you could make it work, but we'd have to be creative.
Okay, so if we did the 1.7 million, would you think it'd still be a 25-year bond? The amount would just be more, but we'd be still going for 25 years?
Just defer to Lynn.
If we did the 1.7,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we would, I don't have an answer for that right now.
It changed we've sketched out the bond issue for 2024, which includes the public services building and equipment certificate you're getting an update on in May, and then the southwest area, but that's like a $5 million investment compared to $2 million, so we'd have to work with our with Tammy at Northland to see what the best dynamic would be. We could present you with options. But with anything, the longer you go out, the more interest you have to pay.
Any other questions, comments?
Nope.
You good? All right, thank you.
Did you have fun?
Brent has.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I, if it's okay with you, can I bug back in on our last topic?
Oh.
It's okay.
I'm
Oh,
so
okay.
over that topic, but yeah, that's fine, go ahead.
It's kind of file under, ooh,
That's good.
yeah. Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
And those of you that know my aptitude for power tools know that's very important. But something I was thinking about that I glossed over, and I think it's critical before we kind of endeavor to kind of get the community going is, because we spent, and this isn't a judgment observation, but the council spent a lot of time talking about the committee, where we didn't a lot with Jonathan Carver Parkway, and so I was trying to think in my mind, like, what's the difference? And I want to make sure that the council like agrees to these objectives, because in my mind I'm thinking, and I could be 33% wrong, but like if you aren't feeling great about like the objectives and are concerned about it, maybe that was a root of like how we landed here. Because if you're saying like I'm fine with the way Mount Hope Road and Old Carver Road operates, I don't want to change anything with this intersection at Broadway and Main, and I think we have parking, I just want to invest 100% into pavement maintenance, we don't need a committee for that. We can just do that. Is it right, Dan?
No, that's a very good point.
So,
The only reason
but-
we have that committee is for.
So, but if you want to do these 5 things, then we can proceed with the committee. And I know it's kind of tongue in cheek with the, or maybe it's not with the, like the roundabout, but if there are guardrails to the conversation, because in my mind, we're cutting this committee loose and whatever they come back with. But if you're saying we don't want a roundabout here and we don't want this intersection to change, it'd be, if we want us to bring that back to you and have you think about it. But if there are guardrails to their creativity on this, it'd be helpful for us to know that now, to say the council's not gonna support this. And I just wanted to make sure that the council's on the same page with this, so that, because we've had this in different occasions where like the task force generates these ideas. You know, we frankly did it with the city hall building, where we kind of did a 180 from what they recommended, and there was some damage control and hard feelings for what we did there from some of those committee members, because what they recommended is ultimately not what was chosen. And so kind of learning from that mistake, I just want to make sure the council is resolute behind these objectives. Doesn't mean you're agreeing to like what they come up with. You can say, we don't like this, or we're gonna switch it 15 degrees. But if you fundamentally know going in, like, we want these intersections to function the way they are, with maybe just some slight modifications, we really don't need the task force to do that. We can do that on a really kind of micro level. So I just wanted to check in on that before we started to kind of cut loose and, spend a lot of time and frankly money developing some, architectural drawings and renderings related to somehow these intersections would function.
Well, one, I like all of these objectives because I feel like these intersections and these opportunities that we're listing here have been things that we've been complaining about and fussing over for years, right? And our hands have been tied because we haven't been able to own this corridor, right? So I would want to look at all of these things. Whether we decide to do all of them or have the budget to do all of them is another question, right? But at least if we can identify ideas to solve some of these issues, that's what I want to hear coming out of this, and then we can decide the budget and the prioritization later. But now that you're bringing up the slide again, so number 4, where we say access for neighborhoods west of downtown, I would also like to look at neighborhoods east of downtown as well. So not just Carver Bluffs, but up the hill as well, because I don't think they have very good access to downtown either along the corridor.
When you say up the hill, do you mean Mount Hope?
Yeah, but what's the neighborhood, the Claymore Huts?
River Bluffs.
Is that River Bluffs?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just,
So,
yeah,
that away.
that way. That way. I'll point in the right direction.
That's the kind of feedback that's helpful to our team.
Perfect.
And I like the, I'm sorry, that you say review, because maybe we don't, maybe that is the best that intersection's ever gonna be. Maybe it is.
Maybe it is,
But people might have a,
But maybe
Things they
that's where
thought
the
of.
roundabout goes, Christie.
excellent.
Put the water fountain in the middle.
But there might be things that come up that we have never thought of, right? So someone's, or maybe it doesn't come up at all,
So,
yeah. So
This
I'm
is the time.
happy to hear what comes out of it.
Yeah, Brent, to answer your question, I don't think you put too many limitations in because you don't want to spur creativity. Because I think of this just from an engineering, safety, and efficiency standpoint. So I'm the wrong person to look at that. But with this group that you have, I wouldn't put a bunch of limitations in there. Let them make recommendations.
Yeah, I also like this list. If I were to prioritize them, I put 2 and 3 higher. Just anything with safety, the vehicle pedestrian safety, and then second priority would be parking. The one thing I would not want the task force to come back with is eliminating any parking. You know, if possible, add. But that would probably just be my only thing. And then the third priority would be around that trail connection. And then last priority would be kind of the looks of it, this streetscape.
Yeah, I think a deal breaker is elimination of parking, and I think bonus points for adding parking. I don't feel particularly passionate about the intersections, but I would love to hear from folks who do. And I'll admit that it gives me a little bit of heartburn when I think about how many years of street aid we would need to get to finance those kinds of things. But again, like, this is just reviewing, and maybe they say Mount Hope is a wonky intersection and it might never get any better. And, you know, I'm okay with reviewing and kind of letting them loose to ideate with staff kind of providing those guide rails of this is what we're not gonna do. Now that's a little bit of a non-traditional idea, yeah, so.
Thanks for helping a chronic overthinker.
Okay.
I'll be able to sleep tonight, thank you.
No, thank you for
Yeah.
knowing that I would give you a hard time going back to that one, but asking to do it, so thank you.
And I'm happy you don't have any anxiety trying to sleep tonight.
About that.
The meeting's young.
It'll be fun.
Okay, item number 4, draft ordinance discussion, peddlers, solicitors, transient merchants, and mobile food units. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight we're back with another version of the ordinance that we looked at back on March 20th for regulating peddlers, solicitors, transient merchants, and then adding a new section for mobile food units or food trucks. We made a handful of changes. Most of them were, or a number of them were based on council feedback that we received last month. But a few of them were also incorporated based on some additional research and time that staff spent thinking about this after the discussion we originally had. And so I tried to summarize in bullet points in the memo the changes which are shown in the red line that was attached to the memo. Just a quick summary. The first thing that I wanted to point out was a change that we made to the way we're treating solicitors, and that's based on what a lot of cities now are doing in light of some case law that has come down that's really ties the city's hands as it relates to how the extent to which we can regulate solicitors based on the federal constitution and our inability to regulate interstate commerce. So really what we're doing now with just solicitors, not with the other two, is saying that they have to register with the city, but that's really the extent to which cities can regulate solicitors. And if you remember, the difference between a solicitor and a peddler is that solicitors are actually taking orders for something that will be delivered at a later date, whether it's a good or a service. And because a lot of times those goods come from other states, courts are saying that cities cannot regulate those due to the Commerce Clause. So that's one change, I would say, pretty substantive change that we made since March 20th. We expanded the list of exemptions for the ordinance just to clarify a few things, just to make sure that newspaper delivery folks are exempt, that there was no intention ever to include this for those, or wholesalers or other types of businesses that I think were not the focus of the ordinance, but, could be incorrectly deemed as the focus if we don't clarify that. And we made some changes based on noise levels that was directly from council feedback. The first thing that we did was we added some language prohibiting the use of generators before 9 o'clock a.m. and after 8 o'clock p.m., but only when located within 100 feet of residentially zoned property. And then second, we incorporated the MPCA, or the State Pollution Control Agency's noise standards into the ordinance to say that you can't violate those ordinances if you're going to be operating in the city. The one, I think the relevant application of those noise standards is, for example, in residential locations, you're going to be limited as a food truck operator to between 60 and 65 decibels during the daytime. That's between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. And an example of what roughly 60 decibels is would be a normal conversation, like the one we're having in here. I think that's what you could expect of that. And there's different ways you measure those decibels when you're talking about enforcing that MPCA noise ordinance. And we can get into those details if you'd like, but I tried to summarize. If you're measuring a period of activity of 1 hour from a residential property, for example, you cannot exceed 60 decibels for more than 50% of the time, or 30 minutes of that 1 hour monitoring period, or 65 decibels if it's more than 10% of the time, or 6 minutes of that 1 hour monitoring period. So again, we did incorporate those into the ordinance. There's some enforcement difficulty, I think, and some practical considerations to keep in mind with that. You'd have to have law enforcement or somebody else sort of measuring. But we would, if it was bad enough and the complaints were there and we thought there was a reason to do it, I don't see any reason why we couldn't have law enforcement help with that. They do have tools to measure noise levels. So.
And you said that is the MPCA standard, that 60 to
Correct.
65, okay.
Yep. We incorporated some exceptions into the mobile food unit permitting for business owners that want to operate those food units through an approved city event like Steamboat Days, Fire Department Open House, the annual public vehicle fair. Those businesses, just to do those types of events, would not need to get a permit. They would still have to follow all the rules and standards, but they wouldn't have to go through that permitting process because there's a separate city involvement and oversight and approval through those respective events. I think there was some information from local operators about potential concern with the hours of operation that we had previously included. So there was an extension of allowable hours of operation. So now it's between 7 a.m. and 12 a.m. It doesn't change any of the noise limitations that they would be allowed. And I think we're open to feedback on that, but that was based on, for example, one of the coffee shops that operates at Fleet Farm. They like to be there well before 8 o'clock, and staff had some concern with, incorporating some rules that would cause issue for their practice and their business. The last two, we removed some language about where to park mobile food units that were not in service. The city already has a pretty comprehensive parking ordinance that has limitations on where you can put vehicles, and that would include mobile food units. And finally, I worked with Vicki, and she did the heavy lifting on this, but we incorporated the proposed fee schedule into the ordinance that sets fees for peddlers and transient merchants at $55, and that's because they will have to go through the background check process, and then for solicitors and mobile food units, it would be at $30, and that really is based on the, a little bit less of amount of work that city staff and law enforcement has to do just in vetting these business owners. So it's kind of a 5-minute summary of the changes. Again, they're hopefully visible in the second attachment here in the document, and we're happy to talk through this, answer any questions, and see if we're a little closer to what the council might want.
Questions, comments, Eric?
I was concerned about the noise near residents, so I think that's perfect to have that language in that standard.
I just have a question on the fee. So if they pay it, then they have it for the rest of the year or like a roll till the end of the year?
It's an annual fee, so unlike liquor licenses that expire all at the same time, the way we have these programs set up is that you're issued a permit and then it lasts 1 year from the date of your individual permit's issuance. So it's a full 1 year, and then you would have to get a renewal if you want to continue operating after the year. Yep, for the same cost.
I don't have any questions. Good updates. I like the additional clarifications as well that you put in there, so you addressed everything we brought up. Christie?
So when we're looking at the one where it talks about they're open between 7 and midnight, that, they still have to follow the generator timing.
Correct.
Correct.
If they're within 100 feet of a
Okay.
residentially zoned parcel.
Okay. But tell me, 12 a.m., why so late?
Just thinking of like bar closing, so like, we've had an uptick in the number of, applications for mobile food units, and so, just thinking about how long that might wanna coincide with the operation of the brick and mortar business. They wanna like say, well, I mean, it's in I would say, our best interest from a public safety standpoint to like have food available to folks if it's not, readily available, and if it's away from the residentially zoned properties. But that's just our line of sight. If you have something different, it's nothing that we're like, it has to be 12 a.m. We're just trying to avoid circumstances where the business owner is contacting Vicky and saying, can we be open till midnight, or can we be open till 11:30 if it was at 10? And we're trying to find a sweet spot where we would say, yeah, go ahead and not violate the ordinance. So.
And I could see if there's concern about 12 a.m., at least during the week, maybe doing 10 p.m. on, Sunday through Thursday and midnight on Friday and Saturday. But that again is open to discussion. But I do think there was some examples, maybe less tangible examples than we had with the coffee business, but there are examples of food trucks that were operating, kind of during the time when people would be more inclined to get food when they're walking out of a bar late at night or
Right, but they
later.
couldn't, considering where our bars are now, I mean, we may have other restaurants that open up, obviously, but they still couldn't be running till, the generators till midnight. They'd still have to be closing those down by 8.
No, unless if they weren't close to a residential.
Right, if they're within 100
Yeah.
feet.
So like, for example, like Getaway is planning, I think, a pretty significant mobile food unit schedule. And so this would allow that to stay open till midnight, as opposed to saying you have to shut down at 10. And
Right, but they couldn't run their generators past 8 p.m. because they're within 100 feet. There's apartments right across the street.
residentially zoned.
Oh.
So you'd have to be like, there are people living downtown, but like you're residentially zoned, but the doghouse is commercial. So that's the distinction that we made. It wasn't of any residence, it was of any residentially zoned property. So again, wherever the council wants to land on it, but that's kind of how it was put together.
Okay. Well, I mean, I kind of think that maybe during the week, I don't know. I'm just throwing it around because there are, and I'm just going to use the Getaway as my example spot right now because that's what we're talking about. You've got the house right next door to it, and that's not zoned, that's CBD. Okay. But we know there's tenants in there, right? Like, and then we have the house across the creek, and then we have,
And in some instances, they might not have generators. I don't know if Getaway is going to provide them power. They probably, maybe they will.
Yes,
I was
actually, I just
thinking
had a
that.
conversation with the owner like on Friday, and he indicated that that was gonna be his way he was going to proceed. He was going to offer them, depending upon where they parked, as long as they could reach the electricity, he was gonna be providing that as part of his service. He indicated that, so.
but we're lucky that we have that now, but this could be
Correct.
a different business owner who isn't selling, at some point. So,
Yes.
I don't know. It's-
Are you still thinking?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
if anyone, yeah,
Can I, I'm gonna
yeah,
go through my
please.
list then.
Mhm.
So the only thing that I had, and I just wanted to triple check, is, again, under exemptions, stop me if you've heard this before, but the one about anything that was raised on a farm, that doesn't include weed being exempt, does it?
No, but I think there are going to be, if not already, you can't sell those things out of vehicles. You have to be operating out of like a brick and mortar retail,
Okay.
kind of thing. So-
Okay, just as long as nobody comes to my door.
Sorry.
You guys know how passionate I am. Let's see, and I think you answered all the other questions that I had. The only, let's see, the, kind of the exemption for city-related stuff, would that include stuff that we work with the school district on? I'm thinking of Back to School Bash, where they have food trucks in Community Park, that's all fine.
Community event, yep.
Yeah, as long as the city's involved, either planning the event or coordinating partly the event, then it would meet that
Okay.
category and they would be exempt.
Okay. That's it for me. Back to you, Christie.
I know. Does anybody else have any?
So how about this scenario of somebody hosting a party at their house, a graduation party, like, so what are the parameters? They have to turn off a generator at 8 p.m.?
Assuming that they're not a rural lot that is not within 100 feet of a neighbor, yeah, they would have to turn generators off at that time.
8 p.m.
Between 9 and 8 is the only time they could operate.
They can operate between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Correct. Yeah, and maybe that homeowner can provide them with power, but under the current regulations, they would have to turn that off.
Okay.
Yeah, or as written, I shouldn't say current regulations, but yes. And some of this, as of right now, the city doesn't have a set of performance standards for food trucks. I think in the way that we have presented this and the discussion that has unfolded and where we're at today, I think this is a pretty good set of requirements, but there may be tweaks necessary after you incorporate this and start enforcing it, and you realize that just doesn't really work for whatever reason. And if we did have to make changes or consider them, we can always tweak it. I'm not suggesting that might happen, but a little bit of this. Every community is unique too, so one set of standards for Carver may not make sense in other communities that have food trucks and different sorts of demands from the residents. And so I would just ask the council to be open to that if any, road bumps.
And we can do that in 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months.
Whenever you want.
Does that give you a little bit more peace of mind?
Some, to put ordinances in place and then, change them quickly. It kind of seems a little bit futile to me, but I'm willing to try. I mean, this is better than what we
Yeah.
had, so I'm certainly willing to.
I just don't think that there's anything in here that is really cringeworthy. I think we're headed in the right direction. Yeah, there might be something that needs to be tweaked 15 degrees, and we can do that by July 4th if it's way out of scope or it's not meeting the needs of our community.
And if you're feeling like it's too loose, it's easier to give than take away, so if you're not feeling comfortable with midnight, it'd be selfishly for staff, it'd be easier to start at 10, and then if there's not a problem, you increase it, but once they start at 12 and then we say we're cutting back, that's where we get a lot of heat. So if the council's not feeling great about it, we recommend starting a little bit more conservative and then opening it up. If you get feedback like this is too early, then you can take all that in.
I'm not hearing anybody screaming.
Well, I
This
feel,
is your-
I feel comfortable with it being a little bit earlier, but it's,
Is the compromise 10 o'clock, Saturday
Saturday.
through Thursday, and then midnight on weekends?
Well, and you don't have to decide now,
No, I like that.
we're taking this to a regular meeting, at your next meeting, so we can.
Yeah.
Not this
Perfect
next
timing.
meeting.
yeah.
Um,
But Courtney, I like that idea.
Does anybody else have strong feelings?
No strong feelings.
I don't have strong feelings, no.
I wasn't proposing it, I was just throwing it out there.
And to be fair to, was it Getaway that might have some of this? Vicky did talk to the one at Fleet Farm and we got some good feedback, and we can start with that and then talk to them and see if that aligns with what they intend to do. And then be prepared to present that information to the council too when we bring it back. So,
But I don't wanna tailor this for just one business though.
I'm not suggesting we're tailoring it for them, but I think it's worth getting feedback, and whether you want to take that into account one way or the other is up to you, but, you know, I think it's the most relevant one right now because that happens to be a business that we know intends to have, as Brent suggests, a pretty robust, schedule for food trucks. So, they don't get to decide, of course, that will be you guys.
Okay,
Does that work?
so moving on, did you get the direction you need from us? And
I-
enough?
So it's 10, right?
Just Sunday through Thursday, 10 o'clock, and
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday. Okay.
All good?
Thank you.
Yes? Yes. Okay. All right, Brent, if you don't mind, we'll hold city manager's report and council request to the meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We got a motion by
Second.
Christie and a second by Joy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I just had such exciting news.
Oh.